What happens when a Jewish merchant carrying a dangerous secret meets a wounded Mexican gunslinger being hunted by ruthless outlaws in the middle of Apache territory? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and let's discover together how two strangers from different worlds found salvation in the most unexpected place on the American frontier. My name is Ezra Goldstein, and I should have died that scorching July afternoon in 1878, somewhere between El Paso and San Antonio. The Texas sun beat down mercilessly on my weathered wagon as I guided my two mules along what barely passed for a trail. In the back, hidden beneath bolts of fabric and pots, lay my real cargo, something that could either make me rich or get me killed. I'd been a traveling merchant for 8 years since leaving New York, but this journey felt different. The weight of the secret I carried pressed heavier than the oppressive heat. Every shadow seemed to hide danger. Every sound made me grip the reins tighter. That's when I heard the gunshots. 3 sharp cracks echoed across the desert, followed by men shouting in English. My mules snorted nervously as I pulled them to a halt behind a cluster of mesquite bushes. Through the branches, I could see riders, 5 of them, all armed, circling something on the ground about 200 yards ahead. "Where is it, Greaser?" one of them yelled. "We know you took it." I adjusted my spectacles and squinted. On the ground, propped against a boulder, sat a man in Mexican clothing. Even from this distance, I could see the dark stain spreading across his shirt. Blood. "I told you," the wounded man replied, his voice carrying despite his obvious pain. "I don't know what you're talking about." The leader, a burly man with a captain's hat, dismounted and walked closer to the wounded Mexican. "Captain Hartwell doesn't like liars, Morales. You and your sister were seen leaving Presidio with our property." At the mention of a sister, I saw the wounded man's shoulders tense. Something cold settled in my stomach. "My sister's been dead 3 months, the Mexican said quietly. "Whatever you lost, it wasn't to me." "Then you won't mind if we search your saddlebags?" Hartwell sneered. They began rifling through the man's belongings, tossing items carelessly into the dust. I should have turned my wagon around and headed back the way I came. That would have been the smart thing, the safe thing. But something about the situation reminded me of another time, another place, when armed men had taken everything from someone who couldn't defend himself. I thought of my brother Samuel, and my hands began to shake. Before I could talk myself out of it, I was climbing down from my wagon. I reached under the driver's seat and pulled out my father's old Colt revolver, the one thing I'd kept from our family's shop in New York. I checked the cylinder, 6 shots. I led my mules forward, making no attempt to hide my approach. The sound of wheels and hooves on gravel caused the riders to look up. "Well, well," Captain Hartwell called out. "Look what we have here, boys. A peddler." I stopped my wagon about 30 feet away, close enough to be heard clearly, but far enough to have room to maneuver if things went bad. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Is there some trouble here?" No trouble that concerns you, Jew," one of the riders said, spitting tobacco juice into the dust. "Keep moving." The casual slur hit me like a physical blow, but I'd heard worse. I glanced at the wounded Mexican. His dark eyes met mine, and I saw something there, not pleading but recognition. He knew I didn't have to stop. He knew I was choosing to. "Actually," I said, climbing down from my wagon with deliberate slowness, "I believe there might be some confusion here. You see, this man works for me." The lie came out so smoothly that for a moment I almost believed it myself. Captain Hartwell's eyes narrowed. "Is that so?" "Indeed," I continued, walking closer but keeping my hands visible. "Rafael Morales has been my guide and protector for the past week. I hired him in El Paso to see me safely to San Antonio." I gestured toward my wagon. "As you can see, I carry valuable merchandise. A man in my position needs reliable help." I could see the wheels turning in Hartwell's head. If the Mexican worked for me, then whatever they thought he'd stolen might actually belong to me, a legitimate businessman rather than a lone drifter they could kill without consequence. The wounded man, Rafael, was looking at me with obvious surprise, but he was smart enough to stay quiet. "What kind of merchandise?" Hartwell asked. "Fabrics, household goods, tools," I replied truthfully. "I have several large orders waiting in San Antonio. Time is money, as I'm sure you understand. Mind if we take a look?" This was the moment of truth. I smiled and gestured toward my wagon. "Of course, though I should mention that I carry papers from the territorial government authorizing my trade route. Any delay in my delivery schedule would have to be explained to some very important people." It was another lie, but delivered with just enough confidence to give Hartwell pause. He studied my face for a long moment, then looked back at Raphael. "Get up," he ordered. Raphael struggled to his feet, one hand pressed against his wounded side. I could see he was losing blood, but he managed to stand without assistance. "If this man works for you," Hartwell said to me, "then you won't mind if we search your wagon. What we're looking for might have ended up in your possession without your knowledge." I nodded agreeably. "Search away. Though I should ask, what exactly are you looking for? If my employee has somehow come into possession of stolen property, I'd certainly want to make it right." "Army payroll," Hartwell said bluntly. "Taken from a supply train 3 days ago. $5,000 in gold coins." I felt my blood run cold. $5,000 was more money than most people saw in a lifetime. If Raphael actually had stolen it, then I'd just made myself an accessory to robbery. If he hadn't, then these men were probably the real thieves looking for a scapegoat. "I can assure you," I said carefully, "that neither I nor my employee have any knowledge of missing army funds, but please search to your satisfaction." Hartwell nodded to his men, and they began going through my wagon with rough efficiency. They found exactly what I'd told them they would: fabric, pots, tools, and other trade goods. Nothing that looked like stolen gold. After 10 minutes of searching, Hartwell was clearly frustrated. "Nothing here," one of his men reported. "Strip search both of them," Hartwell ordered. This was getting dangerous. I glanced at Raphael, who was swaying slightly on his feet but still alert. If they searched us thoroughly, they might find the real secret I was carrying, something far more valuable and dangerous than stolen army gold. "Gentlemen," I said, putting authority into my voice, "I've been patient with your investigation, but this is going too far. I have business to conduct, and my employee needs medical attention. If you have specific charges to make, then make them. Otherwise, I demand that you allow us to continue on our way." "You demand?" Hartwell laughed coldly. "You're not in New York anymore, Jew. Out here, we handle thieves our own way." He was reaching for his gun when Raphael spoke up. "Wait." His voice was weak but steady. "Mr. Goldstein is telling the truth. He hired me in El Paso. I've been riding scout for him for 6 days. He looked directly at me. "But there's something you should know about your employee, senor. I used to ride with these men." The revelation hit the group like a thunderbolt. Hartwell's hand froze on his gun grip. "What did you say?" Raphael straightened up despite his obvious pain. "I rode with Captain Hartwell's gang for 2 years. Left 3 months ago when—" He paused, his jaw tightening. "When my sister Eleanor was killed during one of our jobs, a bank robbery in Presidio." "You lying son of a—" One of the riders started forward, but Hartwell held up a hand. "Go on," the captain said quietly. "I took my share of the gang's money when I left," Raphael continued. $300. That's what you're really after, isn't it? Not some army payroll. You want the money you think you're owed." I watched this exchange with growing understanding. These weren't lawmen hunting a thief. They were criminals hunting a former partner who'd taken his rightful share and tried to go straight. "Elena died because of your greed, Hartwell," Raphael said, his voice growing stronger despite his wound. "That bank job was supposed to be simple, but you had to get greedy, had to take hostages, and when that little girl got in the way—" "Your sister chose her side," Hartwell snarled, "just like you're choosing yours now." The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. I could see fingers moving toward gun handles. In a few seconds, this was going to turn into a bloodbath, and I was standing right in the middle of it. That's when I made the second life-changing decision of the day. "Raphael," I said loudly, "get in the wagon now!" Without waiting for a response, I drew my father's Colt and pointed it at Captain Hartwell's chest. "Gentlemen, my employee and I are leaving. Anyone who tries to stop us will answer to me." The standoff lasted perhaps 10 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. 5 armed men against 1 merchant with a gun and a wounded Mexican. Under normal circumstances, it would have been suicide. But something in my voice, maybe the tone I'd inherited from my father when he'd faced down angry customers in our New York shop, maybe just desperation, made them hesitate just long enough. Raphael stumbled toward my wagon, leaving a trail of blood in the dust. I kept my gun trained on Hartwell while backing toward the driver's seat. "This isn't over," Hartwell called out as I climbed up beside Raphael. "No," I agreed, snapping the reins to get my mules moving. "I don't suppose it is." As we rolled away, I could hear Hartwell shouting orders to his men. They'd be following us soon, and when they did, they'd be coming for blood. I looked over at Raphael, who was slumped against the wagon side, his face pale from blood loss. "Why did you help me?" he asked quietly. I thought about Samuel again, about the night our shop was burned, about all the times I'd wished someone, anyone, had been brave enough to stand up for us. "Because," I said, "sometimes a man has to choose who he wants to be." Behind us, dust clouds were already rising. Hartwell and his men were coming, and they were coming fast. Chapter 2. The sound of pursuing hooves grew louder as our wagon bumped and swayed along the rough trail. Raphael had torn strips from his shirt to bind his wound, but blood still seeped through the makeshift bandage. His breathing was labored, and his skin had taken on an unhealthy pallor. "How bad is it?" I asked, keeping my eyes on the terrain ahead while urging my mules to greater speed. "Bad enough," he replied through gritted teeth. "The bullet's still in there somewhere near my ribs, but I'll live if we can stay ahead of them long enough." I glanced back. The dust cloud was getting closer. "Any suggestions? You know this country better than I do." Raphael studied the landscape through pain-filled eyes. "There's an arroyo about a mile ahead, cuts north into the hills. If we can reach it before they catch us, we might have a chance. The walls are steep enough to give us cover, and there are caves where we could hide." Caves? I didn't like the sound of that. "What kind of caves?" "Apache caves," Raphael said matter-of-factly. "That's the good news and the bad news. Hartwell won't follow us in there. He's too afraid of the Apache. But if there are any Apache actually in there, we'll face that when we come to it," I decided. Right now, certain death from Hartwell seemed worse than possible death from Apache warriors. The arroyo appeared ahead of us exactly where Raphael had said it would be, a narrow cut in the earth that looked like a wound in the desert floor. I guided my mules toward it, praying the wagon wheels wouldn't get stuck in the rocky entrance. "Easy now," Raphael said, gripping the wagon side as we tilted dangerously to one side. "The path gets narrower ahead. We might have to abandon the wagon." The thought of leaving my merchandise, and more importantly, my hidden cargo, made my stomach clench. But staying alive was more important than anything I was carrying. We made it perhaps a quarter-mile into the arroyo before the path became too narrow for the wagon. The walls rose 20 feet on either side, casting us in blessed shade, but also making me feel trapped. "This is as far as we go," I said, pulling the mules to a halt. "Can you walk?" Raphael nodded grimly and climbed down from the wagon, immediately stumbling against the rock wall. I caught his arm to steady him. "The caves are just ahead," he said, pointing to what looked like a solid rock face. "There's a hidden entrance behind those boulders." I helped him toward the rocks, then stopped. "Wait, I need to get something from the wagon first." "Whatever it is, it's not worth your life," Raphael protested. "This is." I went back to the wagon and climbed into the bed. Moving aside the bolts of fabric, I found what I was looking for. A small wooden box, no bigger than a book, wrapped in oiled cloth. I tucked it inside my vest and returned to Raphael. "What's so important that you'd risk—" he began, then stopped as the sound of hooves echoed off the arroyo walls. "They've found us!" We scrambled behind the boulders just as Hartwell's voice boomed from the canyon entrance. "Goldstein! Morales! I know you're in there! Come out now and maybe I'll make it quick!" Raphael found the cave entrance, a gap between two large rocks that was barely wide enough for a man to squeeze through. "In here," he whispered. The cave was larger than I'd expected, with multiple chambers extending back into the hillside. Ancient fire rings and pottery shards suggested it had been used for generations. But what caught my attention were the paintings on the walls, images of horses, buffalo, and human figures in red and black pigment. "Apache," Raphael confirmed, seeing my expression. "This is sacred ground to them." "Are we safe here?" "From Hartwell, yes. From the Apache, that depends on why they find us here." We settled into a chamber deep enough to be hidden from the entrance, but close enough to hear what was happening outside. Raphael was growing weaker by the minute, and I knew his wound needed proper attention soon. "Tell me something," I said quietly. "That money Hartwell mentioned, did you really take it?" Raphael looked at me for a long moment. $300. Money I earned riding with those bastards for 2 years. Money that was supposed to buy my sister and me a new start, somewhere far from Texas. What happened to her? His face darkened. Elena was different. She saw things others didn't see, felt things others couldn't feel. Some people called her touched by God. Others said she was cursed, but she was good, Mr. Goldstein. Pure good in a world full of evil. The bank robbery? Hartwell's plan went wrong. There was shooting. A little girl, couldn't have been more than 6 years old, was caught in the crossfire. Elena threw herself in front of the child. He paused, his voice breaking slightly. Took a bullet meant for someone else. That's the kind of person she was. I thought about my own sister, Rachel, back in New York, about how I'd left her and my mother to fend for themselves while I chased dreams of wealth in the West. "I'm sorry," I said. "After Elena died, I couldn't stay with the gang. Couldn't look at Hartwell knowing his greed had killed the only family I had left, so I took my share and rode away. Been trying to go straight ever since." Outside, we could hear men moving around, calling to each other as they searched the arroyo. "They won't come into the caves," Raphael said. "Too afraid of Apache spirits." "Are you afraid of Apache spirits?" Raphael smiled weakly. "Mr. Goldstein, I've done things that would make spirits run away from me." We sat in silence for several minutes, listening to the search outside gradually move farther away. Finally, the sounds faded entirely. "They're gone," I said. "For now. But Hartwell won't give up. He'll wait at the canyon mouth, or circle around to catch us when we come out." "Then we don't come out, not yet." I pulled the wooden box from my vest and set it between us. "Raphael, I need to tell you something about why I really helped you back there." He looked at the box with curiosity. "What is it?" "Something that belonged to my brother Samuel." I unwrapped the oiled cloth, revealing a simple wooden box with Hebrew letters carved into the lid. "He died 6 months ago, consumption. Before he died, he gave me this and made me promise to take it to Rabbi Stern in San Antonio." I opened the box. Inside, nestled in velvet cloth, were dozens of small gemstones, diamonds, rubies, emeralds. Even in the dim cave light, they sparkled like captured stars. Raphael's eyes widened. "Holy Mother of God, how much are they worth? Enough to buy a ranch, or a business, or a new life somewhere far from here." I closed the box carefully. Samuel was a jeweler. He'd been collecting these for years, planning to use them to bring our family west. After he died, I was supposed to deliver them to the rabbi, who would use them to help other Jewish families start over in America. But I've been thinking about keeping them, about using them to start my own life instead of helping strangers. I looked at Raphael. Until today, I was pretty sure that's what I was going to do. Then I saw those men standing over you, and I remembered what it felt like to be helpless while bad men took everything from you. Raphael was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, "What changed your mind?" "You did. When you told Hartwell the truth about your sister, about why you left the gang. You could have kept lying, could have saved yourself. But you chose to tell the truth, even though it put you in more danger." "Truth has a way of coming out anyway," Raphael said. "Better to control when and how. My father used to say something similar. The truth is like water. It always finds a way." We heard movement outside the cave, not the heavy boots of Hartwell's men, but something lighter, more cautious. Raphael tensed, his hand moving to his gun. "Apache," he whispered. A figure appeared at the cave entrance, an elderly Apache man with long gray hair and weathered skin. He wore traditional clothing but carried a modern rifle. His dark eyes took in our presence without surprise. "You are in sacred place," he said in accented English. "Why?" Raphael started to speak, but I held up a hand. Slowly, I stood and faced the Apache elder. "We seek shelter from evil men who would kill us," I said simply. "We mean no disrespect to your sacred place." The old man studied us both. His gaze lingered on Raphael's wound, then moved to my face. "You are the one they call Goldstein," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, how do you—" "Word travels fast in the desert. A Jewish merchant who stopped bad men from killing a Mexican. This is unusual." "I did what anyone should do," I said. "No," the Apache elder replied. "You did what few men would do. My name is Standing Bear. These are my people's caves." "We'll leave immediately," I said. "We don't want to cause trouble." Standing Bear shook his head. "Trouble is already here. The men who hunt you, they have made camp at the canyon mouth. They plan to wait for you to come out." "How long will they wait?" "As long as it takes. Unless—" Standing Bear paused, considering something. "There is another way out of these caves. A passage that leads to the next valley. But it is dangerous, and your friend is wounded." I looked at Raphael, who was growing paler by the minute. "How dangerous?" "The passage is narrow, and there are places where one must climb. Also, it leads through the heart of our sacred mountain. Not all spirits there are friendly to white men." "But some are?" I asked. Standing Bear smiled, the first expression of warmth I'd seen from him. "Some spirits judge men by their actions, not their skin. You stopped evil men from doing evil. This is good medicine." Raphael struggled to his feet. "I can make it," he said, though his voice suggested otherwise. "First we tend to your wound," Standing Bear said. "My daughter knows the healing ways. She can remove the bullet and stop the bleeding." "We don't have time," Raphael began. "We make time," Standing Bear interrupted. "A man who bleeds to death in the sacred passages brings bad luck to everyone." He disappeared from the cave entrance and returned a few minutes later with a young Apache woman carrying a leather pouch of medical supplies. She had her father's intelligent eyes and moved with quiet confidence. "This is my daughter, Morning Star," Standing Bear said. "She will heal your wound." Morning Star examined Raphael's injury with practiced hands, speaking to her father in Apache. He nodded and translated. "The bullet is not deep, but it must come out. She can do this, but you must trust her." Raphael looked at me, then back at the Apache woman. "Do it." What followed was the most difficult half-hour of my life. Raphael bit down on a piece of leather while Morning Star worked to extract the bullet with tools that looked frighteningly primitive, but clearly knew their purpose. I held his shoulders as he writhed in pain, sweating and cursing in Spanish. When it was over, Morning Star showed us the bullet, a small piece of lead that had been slowly killing him. She cleaned and bandaged the wound with herbs and clean cloth, speaking softly to Raphael in Spanish. "She says you will live," Standing Bear translated, "but you must rest for at least 1 day before attempting the passage." "We don't have a day," I protested. "Hartwell will wait," Standing Bear finished. "He fears these caves too much to enter, and my warriors will watch him to make sure he does not try to circle around. You are under Apache protection now." As Raphael finally fell into an exhausted sleep, I found myself alone with Standing Bear at the cave entrance. The sun was setting, painting the desert in shades of gold and red. "Why are you helping us?" I asked. Standing Bear was quiet for a long time. 15 years ago, my son was wounded in a fight with cavalry soldiers. A Jewish doctor in El Paso saved his life, asked for no payment. He said all people are children of the same God. Dr. Nathan Rosen, you know him? He's my cousin, I said, amazed at the connection. I was planning to visit him in El Paso on my way back east. Standing Bear nodded, as if this explained everything. The spirits work in mysterious ways, Mr. Goldstein. Perhaps you and your Mexican friend were meant to find each other. Perhaps you were both meant to find us. I don't believe in fate, I said. Neither did I, Standing Bear replied. Until my son lived because a stranger chose to help. That night, as I lay on the cave floor listening to Raphael's steady breathing and watching Apache guards move silently past the entrance, I thought about choices and consequences. I thought about Samuel and the gemstones, about Hartwell and his murdered greed, about Raphael's sister Elena and her sacrificial love. By morning, I knew what I had to do. Chapter 3. I woke to find Raphael sitting up, testing his shoulder movement gingerly. The color had returned to his face, and his eyes were clearer than they'd been since I'd found him. "How do you feel?" I asked. "Like I've been shot," he replied with a weak smile. "But alive. That Apache woman knows her business." Morning Star appeared at the cave entrance, carrying a bowl of something that smelled like pine needles and sage. She spoke to Raphael in Spanish, and he drank it without question. "Medicine tea," he explained to me, "for strength and healing." Standing Bear joined us, carrying his rifle and a serious expression. "My scouts report that the white men still wait at the canyon mouth. But there is something else. More riders coming from the east, cavalry soldiers." "Army?" I asked. "A patrol from Fort Davis. They will reach the canyon by midday." Raphael and I exchanged glances. If the army found Hartwell and his men here, there would be questions. Questions that might lead to us and to the story of stolen army payroll that had started this whole mess. "We need to leave now," Raphael said, struggling to his feet. Standing Bear nodded. "The passage I spoke of leads to Spider Rock Canyon, about 8 miles north. From there you can reach the main trail to San Antonio, but you must leave your wagon behind." The wagon, my merchandise. 6 months of work and planning, abandoned in an Apache cave. But as I thought about it, I realized it didn't matter. What mattered was in the wooden box tucked inside my vest. "There's something I need to get from the wagon first," I told them. I retrieved a few essential supplies, water, food, ammunition, but left the rest. As I worked, I made a decision that surprised even me. "Standing Bear," I called. "The trade goods in my wagon, cloth, pots, tools. Your people are welcome to them." The Apache leader raised an eyebrow. "This is valuable merchandise." "It's just things," I said. "Things can be replaced." Raphael watched me with curious eyes as we prepared to leave. "You're full of surprises, Mr. Goldstein." "Ezra," I corrected. "I think we're past formalities." "Ezra. And I'm Raphael, not Rafa. Only my sister called me Rafa." Morning Star appeared with a pair of moccasins for each of us. "For the passage," Standing Bear explained. "Boots make too much noise and the rocks are slippery." The passage began at the back of the cave system, through an opening so narrow we had to turn sideways to fit through. For the first 100 yards, we moved in complete darkness, feeling our way along smooth rock walls worn by centuries of water. Then the passage opened into a larger chamber, lit by shafts of sunlight from somewhere far above. The walls here were covered with more Apache paintings, complex spirals and animal figures that seemed to dance in the moving light. "Sacred ceremonies were held here," Standing Bear explained in a whisper. "The spirits of my ancestors still watch." As we moved deeper into the mountain, I began to understand why this route was considered dangerous. The path twisted and turned, sometimes requiring us to crawl through spaces barely large enough for a man, other times crossing narrow ledges over deep chasms. Raphael struggled with his wound, stopping frequently to rest, but he never complained. I found myself admiring his determination and wondering what had driven him to ride with outlaws in the first place. "Tell me about your sister," I said during one of our rest stops. "What was she like?" Raphael's face softened. Elena was magical. Not in a supernatural way, but in the way she saw people. She could look at a stranger and see right through to their heart. She always knew when someone was lying, when someone was afraid, when someone needed help. Sounds like a gift. It was, but it was also a curse. She felt other people's pain as if it were her own. When she saw suffering, she had to try to stop it. That's what got her killed. She couldn't stand by and watch an innocent child get hurt. We continued climbing through the passage, following Standing Bear's sure-footed lead. After about 2 hours, we reached a chamber where 5 different tunnels branched off in different directions. "This is the heart of the sacred mountain," Standing Bear said. "From here, the spirits decide which path you take." "What do you mean?" I asked. Instead of answering, Standing Bear sat cross-legged on the floor and closed his eyes. "Listen," he said simply. Raphael and I exchanged glances, but we sat down as well. At first, all I could hear was our own breathing and the distant sound of wind through rock. But gradually, I became aware of other sounds, or maybe they were feelings rather than sounds. One tunnel seemed to whisper of danger, of loose rocks and long falls. Another felt cold and empty, like death. But the third tunnel, the one that led slightly downward, seemed to hum with something I couldn't quite identify. Hope, maybe, or possibility. "That one," I said, pointing to the downward passage. Standing Bear opened his eyes and smiled. "The spirits approve of you, Ezra Goldstein. That is indeed the correct path." The rest of the journey through the mountain took another 3 hours. We emerged from a cave opening hidden behind a waterfall, blinking in the afternoon sunlight like creatures being born into a new world. Spider Rock Canyon spread out below us, a vast valley dotted with juniper trees and crossed by a clear stream. And there, visible in the distance, was the main trail to San Antonio. "We made it," Raphael said, his voice filled with wonder. Standing Bear led us down to the stream, where we refilled our water bottles and washed the cave dust from our faces. As we prepared to continue our journey, I pulled the wooden box from my vest. "Standing Bear," I said, "I want to give you something." I opened the box, revealing the gemstones. Standing Bear's eyes widened slightly, but he didn't speak. "These belonged to my brother," I explained. "They were meant to help people start new lives. I think he would approve of them helping your people." I selected a handful of the smaller stones, diamonds and emeralds worth at least $1,000, and held them out. Standing Bear shook his head. "I cannot accept such a gift." "It's not a gift," I said. "It's payment. For medical treatment, for safe passage, for protection from our enemies, and," I paused, choosing my words carefully, "for showing me what real courage looks like." "Real courage? Your daughter risked her safety to heal a stranger. You risked your people's security to protect us. That's courage. What I did back at the Arroyo, that was just fear turned sideways." Standing Bear considered this, then slowly reached out and took the stones. "These will help my people through the coming winter," he said solemnly. "And they will help us remember that not all white men are enemies." As Standing Bear prepared to return to his people, Raphael pulled me aside. "Ezra," he said quietly, "what you just did, that was a small fortune." "Yes, it was. And you gave it away without hesitation." "I gave away some stones," I corrected. "I kept what matters most, which is the knowledge that I can choose to be better than I was yesterday." We said our goodbyes to Standing Bear and began the final leg of our journey to San Antonio. As we walked along the trail, Raphael was unusually quiet. "What's on your mind?" I asked. "I've been thinking about what you said back in the cave, about choosing who you want to be." He paused, adjusting the sling Morning Star had made for his arm. "I've spent the last 3 months trying to figure out how to go straight, how to make up for the things I've done. But I've been thinking small. Maybe find work on a ranch. Maybe start over in California. Those are good goals. But what if I could think bigger? What if I could do something that would actually make a difference? Like what? Raphael stopped walking and turned to face me. Come with me to San Antonio. Help me find this Rabbi Stern you mentioned. And then, let's start a business together. What kind of business? The kind that helps people. You said those gemstones were meant to help families start new lives. What if we used them for exactly that? What if we started a company that helps people, immigrants, former outlaws, anyone who needs a second chance, find honest work and build decent lives? I stared at him, amazed by the audacity of the idea. Raphael, I'm a merchant. You were a gunfighter. What do we know about helping people? We know what it's like to need help, he said simply. We know what it's like to have someone take a chance on us when they didn't have to. That's a start. I thought about my brother Samuel, about his dreams of bringing our family west. I thought about Dr. Rosen in El Paso, who had saved Standing Bear's son and asked for no payment. I thought about Elena Morales, who had died protecting a stranger's child. All right, I said, let's go find Rabbi Stern. Let's see if two unlikely partners can build something worthwhile. As we resumed walking toward San Antonio, I felt lighter than I had in months. Behind us lay the sacred mountain where we'd found unexpected allies. Ahead lay a city where we might find unexpected possibilities. Ezra, Raphael said as we crested a hill and saw San Antonio spread out in the valley below. I need to ask you something. Back at the Arroyo, when you first helped me, what made you do it? Really? I thought about the question for a long time before answering. You reminded me of someone, I said finally. Who? Me. 5 years ago, when I needed help and didn't get it, I looked at my traveling companion, this former outlaw who had become my unlikely friend. I guess I decided it was time to be the person I wished I'd met back then. Raphael nodded slowly. You know what I think? What? I think your brother would be proud of what you're doing with those stones. And I think your sister would be proud of the man you're choosing to become. We walked the rest of the way to San Antonio in comfortable silence, two men who had found redemption not in changing their pasts, but in choosing their futures. Behind us, the desert wind erased our footprints from the trail. Ahead, a new story was waiting to begin. 6 months later, the Goldstein Morales Immigrant Aid Society was helping 3 families a week find honest work and decent homes in Texas. Rabbi Stern called it a miracle of cooperation. Standing Bear's people called it good medicine. I just called it the best decision I ever made in my life. What did you think of Ezra and Raphael's unlikely friendship? Have you ever had to choose between personal gain and helping a stranger? Tell us your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories of redemption from the American frontier. Your support helps us bring these powerful tales of courage and second chances to life. Ring that bell for notifications and let us know where you're watching from.